One of the things I hear a lot about GA4 is that people find it difficult to find what they're looking for. We're going to tackle that head on in this video. I'll show you some tips and tricks for how to get at the data you need quickly and efficiently, and how to get the data to do what you need it to do. I've also recorded a video that goes into features of reporting. So how to find what you're looking for when you've arrived at a specific report. And I'll pop a link up to that one. The two together should help you really get comfortable making our way around GA4. So let's get started. All right, let's start by looking at the navigation on the left. This is really confusing. Reports are what you'd think. That's where the main reporting is in GA4. Explorations, or this explore button, leads to explorations. And explorations are something really quite different. It is a form of reporting, you could say. It's really more for exploring data than reporting on data, though. And we'll touch on explorations a bit more and how they're different from reports. But the confusing thing is this advertising section, which is really just more reports. So there's a few reports in here that I don't know why Google didn't put them in reporting. They're reports. They have many of the same dimensions and metrics as other reports. We'll have a look at that also in a minute. The thing I want to dig into deeper is how to find what you're looking for. And a lot of times where I start is up here in the search bar. And I'll show you something that's really helpful to know, which is if you look down, these icons make a difference. This little clock icon is a search that I've done or a place that I've been recently. And this little circle with an arrow in it is an exploration. And then these little bar charts are reports, and then we have admin settings, and then down here we have insights. The one I want you to pay the most attention to are these little bar charts, because that's where we're going to find reports. So like if I was looking for the landing pages report, then I can see these are explorations that I created with landing pages. And here's the landing page report. A little weird how it didn't find it when I typed landing pages, or it did for a second and then went away. But there it is. So that's one way to find what you're looking for. While we're here, another thing that can be handy is in the search bar, you can actually look for specific metrics. So for example, if I wanted to know organic search visitors last month, users for first user medium of organic search, February 1st through February 28th, 2009. So that's pretty handy. Like if you just quickly need a metric, that can be nice. I've found there are certain things that doesn't find as well as others. You do have to get the name of the dimension or metric pretty spot on for it to work. So that's one shortcut for finding what you're looking for. And I'll show you another one. So if we go to reports here, there's this overall reporting snapshot. And then most of the sections in reporting have overview reports as well that are kind of similar. The thing that's helpful to know here is these view events, view all insights, view traffic by geography. Just think of that as navigation. Like each of these takes you to a specific report. So if I want to go here, it's going to take me down into the user demographic or traffic by geo report. So each one of those overview tabs is in fact navigation, among other things. And I've found sometimes there's stuff that I can find this way that I have a hard time finding just by going through the navigation on the left. So I'm not going to describe in detail each report. I mean, you can do that. You can just go into GA, look around, you'll start getting a feeling for dimensions and metrics. One thing I'll show you, though, that it took me a little while to catch on to is when you go to a specific report, this dropdown is really important. There's a lot hidden in here. So I'm looking at how traffic is acquired. What this means is the source somebody came from or where somebody came from for a given session. That's in contrast to user acquisition, which is where a user originally came from, even if they've come to the website multiple times in different ways, what it was the way they got there in the first place. So these are ways that people get to the website for a given session, and you see all these different dimensions here. Without knowing that, you could look forever for example, a session source medium. You could just keep clicking around and clicking around and be like, where is it? And here it is. So a lot of times what you have to do is think about the type of report that you care about. So for example, if I wanted to see by page path, I've got that here, but I can also look on and this is engagement pages and screens, but I can also change this to page title and content groupings. Again, you have to kind of start to understand which dimensions are related to each other, and a lot of times they're grouped together in the same report. So as I said, I'm not going to go through each of these. I would just recommend clicking down these, but I will point out a few things. One is you see Search Console here, and this is showing up because I've linked my GA4 account to Google Search Console. If I hadn't done that, this wouldn't show up. The same is true for a Google Ads report, that you're not going to see a Google Ads report here because I haven't linked this GA4 account to a Google Ads account. But if I did, you would see a Google Ads report show up. So there are some reports that you might hear about and you're like, how come I don't have this? And that could be the reason why. I have also noticed that in accounts that I set up a long time ago, sometimes reports that Google has added since I set it up don't show up. The customizing reports and finding reports that are not showing up is a little bit of a complicated topic. But if you click on this library icon, if you have edit permissions in GA4, you can find reports that don't show up in the regular interface and you can add them. And I will record a video that goes into detail in customizing the interface because it is kind of a complicated topic. I'm going to skip over explorations for a second. We'll come back to it. I mentioned this advertising section is really just more reports. So there's only these 3 by default in here. And the model comparison, if you used Universal Analytics, is very similar to that. It gives you the ability to compare attribution models. So attribution models define the rules for how a conversion is attributed to a source. So you can see here cross-channel last click. So what was the last way they got to the website before converting? I can do first click. I can do a couple of different models here. It looks like I don't have enough data to choose data-driven here, but if I did have more data, I could do that. I don't know. This is getting kind of obscure. The report here that I do want you to see, because it is helpful, is what you set as your default conversion attribution model in GA4. This is the report that will show it, is right here. If you go to advertising, performance all channels, here I can see conversions attributed based on the attribution model I set in admin. I'll pop up a link to a video that I recorded that goes into detail about attribution models in GA4 because it's pretty confusing. One thing I'll show you while I'm here is if you mouse over metrics, you'll see this little pop-up which tells me what that metric is. That can be really helpful, especially if you're used to Universal Analytics. GA4 has a lot of different metric definitions and different metrics that you didn't have in Universal Analytics. So just as a quick example, if we go back to the traffic acquisition report, this engaged sessions, average engagement time per session, engaged sessions per user, these are all new. And you can start to see some definition here. You can also go to Google Help, of course, to get a much more detailed definition of what those are. So the last thing I'll cover is explorations. I won't go into a detailed, like, here's how to use explorations. There are a bunch of different types of explorations here. So you can see freeform funnel path. If we click this, we've got segment overlap, user explorer, cohort exploration, user lifetime. Each one of these types of explorations behaves differently and honestly deserves its own video. I'll just pop into an exploration so you can see what it is and just talk about a few things with explorations. So things that are good about explorations, you can see here, this looks okay, but it's not really something you would show your boss. The reports in GA4 are designed more for non-technical users to understand and be able to see how much traffic we got, where did traffic come from, that sort of thing. Explorations are really designed more for analysts. And there's a bunch of information that you only see if you mouse over stuff. So it makes it fine if you're interacting with it, but terrible if you want to just print it out and send it to somebody. And there's some stuff that's really kind of hidden that you have to click around, like the path exploration report. It actually doesn't really work as a static report at all. It's really fundamentally designed to be interacted with. So good things about explorations, I can add metrics and dimensions to my heart's content, sort of. There's a few metrics and dimensions that I won't get here that I do get in reporting. But for the most part, they're all here. There are dimension incompatibilities that you experience with reporting and in explorations, which is just to say sometimes dimensions have different scope, and so you can't really combine them. For example, user scope dimensions and session scope dimensions, for the most part, are incompatible, so you couldn't actually report and stuff, and that's just really to do with how the data is structured. A few things that I do love about explorations. One is that with filters and explorations, we have the ability to do contains matches, which we cannot do with filters and reporting. We can use regular expressions. If you know what those are and you're comfortable using them, they're super powerful ways to be able to match patterns in page names or other dimensions. I love that. There are segments that are very similar to segments in Universal Analytics, and with a lot of the power of segments in Universal Analytics, whereas in reporting in GA4, segments have been replaced really with comparisons, which are super limited. With comparisons, you can only say, I want to compare this exact match of this dimension, versus segments. You can do sequences, you can do, again, regular expression matches, you can do a bunch of things. So like that a lot more. Downsides of explorations, a much steeper learning curve than reporting. Each exploration, you really kind of have to get the hang of how the exploration works. The UI can be pretty frustrating where, I don't know, like if we add, I'm going to add a freeform exploration here. I'll do page path and query string. I'm going to add as a metric, I'll add view. So views here, import that. I'm going to drag this down to values. This is okay. What you'll find is if you start adding more metrics, it'll start clipping your dimension names, and the only way you can see the full dimension name is to mouse over it. You can't actually change the size of these columns, which is so weird. So there's just funky stuff like that with the UI. I mentioned that it's designed to be interactive, which can be good from an exploration standpoint, but bad from a reporting standpoint. Bad if you want to share it with somebody that's not comfortable in explorations. The last thing I'll point out with explorations is that explorations are based on raw event data in GA4, whereas reports are based on aggregated data. And there's no limit to the storage of aggregated data in GA4, but there is a limit to the retention of event level data. This is a setting in data settings and admin, and the default is 2 months. So what that means is that you can't actually do explorations further back than 2 months. That's super limiting. I mean, most of the time, well, a lot of times I'm running reports that I want more than 2 months worth of data. I will advise that you go and change that retention setting to 14 months so that when you come around to doing explorations, you'll have more data. So you can change the data retention setting. The maximum is 14 months, but that's way better than 2. Do recommend that you do that. But in any case, the default, what you find when you go to create an exploration right now, is you won't see more than 2 months worth of data. Sampling can be applied to explorations, which is to say Google, when you have a lot of data, Google may do sampling. So not show you exact numbers, but show you numbers based on sampling. That's also true in reporting. So it's not really a limitation of explorations versus reporting. But the weird thing is that the sampling may not be done in exactly the same way. So if you have a really high volume website, you may notice that certain metrics are different in explorations than they are in reporting. And a very possible reason is because of sampling. Quick recap. When in doubt, use the search bar. You'll see those report icons and you know you found a report. And explorations are more powerful, overcome some of the limitations of reporting in GA4, but have some significant limitations of their own. That's about it. If you need help setting up GA4, setting up dashboards, learning about GA4, we do all that. Go to 2octobers.com, reach out. Love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.